want you to flip open in your handouts all the way to the back page. So everybody has a handout, 4 pages. Flip open in the back to the thing that says Headquarters, 7th Army on the top. What you're looking at is a real no-kidding report, an evaluation report from 1943. It's on a guy named Omar N. Bradley. Anybody ever heard of that dude? All right, good. If it were only this easy for us. So Patton's is his rater. How was his performance? Superior, one word, period, done. Hey, how did he rate among his peers? Well, he's number 1 if you flip over to the back. I know all of his peers, and he's the best one. Signed, George S. Patton. Hey, you want to make any further comments? Nope. Done. Hey, who's his additional rater? Who's his additional rater? General Dwight D. Eisenhower, yeah. So, why is it not this easy for us? Well, I would submit to you that none of us in the room are 3-star generals. Patton's not our rater. Eisenhower's not our additional rater, and we're not fighting the greatest war of all time going across the fields of Europe there in battle. It is a little bit more difficult for us. So what I want to do for you today is take an opportunity to give you a very, very specific methodology for writing. So as Colonel Wall said, first of all, a little bit on my background. I was a pilot once upon a time, still wear the badge so I can reminisce about flying an airplane, but I've been a disqualified guy for a long time due to some low back issues. So when I became disqualified at Dias, the commanders decided a great place for me to be would be, anybody have any ideas? Be an executive officer, that's right. And then commanders above them decided that would be a good idea, and then generals decided that would be a good idea. So I spent 6 or 7 years doing higher headquarters executive officer stuff, and in the course of that time, writing thousands and thousands and reviewing thousands and thousands and editing thousands and thousands of OPRs, EPRs, and PRFs. So what I want to do for you today is to give you the decoder ring. I'm going to shake up the cereal box. I'm going to reach in, I'm going to grab the decoder ring out, and I'm going to hand it to you today so you know exactly how this is done. I'm going to teach you how the RegAF guys write EPRs so that we can at least, in some ways, be able to be parity and competitive with them. Step-by-step instructions for writing is what we're going to talk about today. You'll see step-by-step instructions listed there in the front. Now, I have not written an EPR one, but I have written a guide called Breaking the OPR Code, and all of this is not applicable to EPRs, but a lot of it is. And so, for instance, we're going to post this on the Wing website a little bit later on, and you can read it if you want. I would definitely encourage you to look through the attachments. So you'll find in the attachments a list of action words that you can use, for instance. So this would be a helpful source of information as we get into this. Does anybody think that the system we have for writing reports is a little bit ridiculous, a little bit much? Anybody? Oh, we got one in the back too? Okay, yeah. Sometimes I feel like in all the work I've done on EPRs and OPRs, it gets to be a little much. But I'm here to tell you today that we're not going to talk about philosophy. I'm just going to teach you about the system as it exists today. A new AFI 36-2406, the AFI that governs OPRs and EPRs, just came out in January of 2013. So there's new AFI on the street to make sure that we know the standards. I'm going to teach you the standards and be able to apply them effectively. That's our focus today. Now you'll notice on my slides that there's no patches. There's no cool backgrounds. And the reason for that is that this is just my opinion based on experience. This is me teaching you based on what it says in the AFI, what I've seen chiefs and colonels and generals do time and again on the RegAF side, applying also the rules that apply and don't apply to the Guard. So my views do not necessarily reflect those of NGB A1 or Air Force A1 when it comes to this. Again, this is just my experience. Everybody good with that? Hopefully it'll be helpful. But that also means that I can say what I want, so that'll be good for you too. And I also want to defer to your FSS folks, to the higher headquarters A1 folks if you have official questions. Today I encourage you to ask questions. Ask all kinds of questions. I'll be happy to answer them. If it's something that I feel like you need an official guidance answer on, and I'll go ahead and defer you to the FSS folks for them to give you the official institutional position, if you will. All right, so why do we want to write better? Well, I don't know about you, but there's really two ways when it comes to looking at another guy and deciding whether or not I want him to work for me, whether or not I want him to get promoted, whether or not I want him to get an award. There's really two ways that I prefer. Number one, my personal knowledge of the NCO, of the chief. Those are ways that I like. I want to know, hey, what's my personal interaction with this guy? How does it work? And that's one of the reasons that I love the Guard. I love the Guard because it's not just records. You all know each other. You all know who the strongest folks are. You know who the go-to people are. And that's a huge asset. Secondly, if I don't know the individual that well, there's a second method I prefer. I like to go to people that I trust and ask them their opinion. And normally they'll give it to me if they know the individual well. Is that how your system works here in the Guard? Yes or no? All right, let me hear. Yes or no? Yes, that's how your system works. And I got it. I've read your regs. I read how you get promoted. I understand it now that I've been at the Guard Bureau for a year and a half, and I know why that system works and genuinely works well. However, there are times when that system cannot work very well, and those times, just to give you a few examples, are these. Anytime you go outside this wing to do anything, especially if you go outside the state of Mississippi to do anything, then you are not well known, or perhaps not even known at all. And then you're looking at more of an active duty type of construct. If you want to go compete for a stat tour, they always want to look at your record, at least to start out with, at least to decide whether or not you're worth getting an interview up at the Guard Bureau, somewhere else out there in the Title X world. If there's any special opportunity boards, then those type of things always have records that play into them. Job interviews of any sort, any commander worth his salt will normally at least take a look at the record first before conducting interviews, seeing who he wants to hire. And then let me just mention this, because this happens a whole lot, even on the RegAF side. Plans change over time. Not by a show of hands, but for those of you over 40, just give me a good head nod. Do plans change over time? Do I have an amen to that? I'm in my mid-30s and my plans keep changing whether I want them to or not. And so for you, today, right now, you may say, I do not ever want to go to the Guard Bureau and work. I do not ever want to go to state headquarters and work. I do not ever want any other opportunities than sitting here doing my job. And today that might be true, but tomorrow it may not be. And I would also encourage you not to apply whatever personal skill set or rule set you use for yourself to your ratees. Your ratees' plans change over time. Your ratees may want a little more than perhaps you want out of a professional career. So with that in mind, that makes records much more important than perhaps you think of them today. So what Colonel Wall was talking about at the beginning here is the Secretary of the Air Force's 3-to-1 initiative. Show of hands, how many have heard of the Secretary of the Air Force's 3-to-1 initiative? All right, not many. Let me just explain to you very briefly what this is. Over the past year or so, we've worked through a lot of things on the higher headquarters staff about the 3-to-1 initiative. There are three components: the reserves, the Guard, and the RegAF. The Secretary of the Air Force has decided we have a whole bunch of stovepiped personnel systems. We have electronic systems that are all different. We have rating systems that are all different. And not that they're ultimately going to end up being the exact same, because they're not. And higher headquarters folks understand that. But they can be a lot closer if we try to merge them together. And so his directive from the top down is to go 3-to-1 to try to get a lot more similarity and a lot more transparency across the force. As we nug down and try to find resources, try to cut manpower in various places, there's some cost savings that the higher headquarters folks see of us doing things much more like each other. And let me just say very, very clearly that this is not how it's going to go. The RegAF guys aren't going to go, you know what? I think that Guard stuff works pretty well. Let's all do what the Guard does. Does anybody think that's going to happen? No, because it's not. They're going to go, this is our way of doing things. The reserve components are over here. We understand that they are uniquely situated in the way that they do business, in the way they have part-time employment. They can't be totally like the professional full-time force in totality, but they can be a lot closer to us than perhaps what they are now. So with that in mind, let me just say, what may not seem like it matters today might matter a whole lot tomorrow. Anybody familiar with the Exceptional Promotion Program? Your Exceptional Promotion Program? If I understand the regulations correctly, that's opportunities for guys to get to Senior in Chief at the state level. Guard Bureau allocates, depending on how large your state is, a couple slots a year for those. Right now, Guardsmen do not have EPRs. Your part-time guys do not have EPRs. Is that correct? Right, you don't have those. But what seems like it doesn't matter today might matter in ways that we can't imagine 10 years from now. An example of that would be for the Exceptional Promotion Program. I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if 10 years from now, for that program, they ask for your last 5 EPRs. And that is part of the process to decide who gets selected for promotion. Does everybody understand where I'm going with that? So just understand that it's a game changer. What Colonel Wall was saying is, it's coming. I'm not going to get into A1's chili and tell you exactly how they're going to do this phased approach via birth munch over the next few years of making sure everybody, tech sergeant and above, gets EPRs, et cetera, et cetera. However, it's coming, and it doesn't look like it's going to be turned off. And so understand that if every Guardsman has an EPR, that's a game changer in ways that perhaps right now we collectively in the Guard, based on the way we've done business for many years, cannot see how the second and third order effects may play out. Does anybody have any questions on that? At the very least, it's just important you understand that this is important. Okay, now this is my opinion. It is a leadership failure for those that have records, for those that have a long train of EPRs, when the record and the member don't match up. So here's how it normally works out on the RegAF side. The record looks a lot more awesome than the dude is. You're like, all right, this dude walks on water on the record, not so much in person. On the Guard side, I found that it's pretty much the exact opposite in general. That I have awesome dudes that have sucky records. And so we want to fix that to make sure that the member matches the record accurately and vice versa. All right, you can look on the first page. What I've included for you is a step-by-step process. This is the methodology when I sit down to write EPRs. This is the methodology that I use. And you can see on the second and third pages are example Air Force 910s and Air Force 911s. If you are not really familiar with them, this is just an example of a report that's actually filled out. That's not too bad. So the first thing we do is make a plan. Mistake number 1. Here is mistake number 1. You think the EPR writing starts 2 weeks before the report is due. And especially if you're talking about a 2-year period, that's just not going to work. It's not. So what you have to do is start day 1 of the rating period. And here's how you start day 1 of the rating period. Anytime an enlisted person, a young officer, whoever goes to work for me, I pull up all the information they have in their record. Now, for some of your part-time enlisted guys, that may not be very much. But you can at least pull up their SURF, their one-page duty history. Take a look at that. See if there's any current rating period information that's there. Do they have a training report? Have we given them a decoration recently? Do they have a series of decorations? Are there letters of evaluation that's out there on them? I review all that information. Then I make a determination on what I think the airman's trajectory is. Do you have anybody working for you now that perhaps somebody else in the wing might have a plan for? Maybe, maybe not. In some places I've been, I've had bosses that have had plans for my subordinates, and that's just at least important for me to know. Not that I have to be a slave to it, but I have to be informed by what the system has said or what bosses above me have said, perhaps is this guy's trajectory. So once I determine that, I map out the next career steps. Where's the next place this guy's going to go? Where are the next 2 or 3 places this guy's going to go? Where do I see this guy or gal ended up in 5 years? Just so I have a general idea so I'm ready to talk about it on the next step. And then I determine how I can help the ratie get there. So decorations, do I need to cut them an extra decoration? Do I need to put them in for an NCO of the quarter, NCO of the year, 12 OAY type of award? Do I need to help them get an early upgrade in their AFSC to help them get 5 level, 9 level, all those sorts of things, 7 level. Is there a next job I can help push that individual for? I have all that stuff in my mind before I sit down and I'm ready to talk to the rateee. Now this step is especially important when you go to fill out those part-timers EPRs, which you're going to have to do, the drill status guardsmen's. This means that you have a plan up front so that how many part-time guys do we have in here? Let me see, do we have a few? Okay, good. A lot of part-time guys. That means that for you who are part-time dudes, when you have subordinates that are part-time dudes and they show up to a UTA weekend, you have a plan for things they are going to do, things they are going to touch in order for you to have fodder to put on the EPR. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a second, but when you don't have a plan and they just show up and then they leave and they don't do anything, it is especially difficult to fill 1/12 of the year's worth of work with a full EPR. So if I had lieutenants that I was supervising or master sergeants when I've supervised before and I go, guess what, we're going to write an EPR, a total EPR on 30 days of work that you did, I would think that would be close to impossible unless I had some very, very proactive planning. That's what it's going to take. Then step 2 is to provide expectations and feedback. Give you an opportunity to read the Dilbert there. All right, so when it comes to giving feedback, there's an actual Air Force form that you would sit down and give feedback. It's not part of the official record, but it is part of the correspondence. For tech sergeants and below, that's a 931. For senior NCOs, it's a 932. So the first thing I do is to set clear expectations. If you don't set clear expectations, success becomes a moving target for the rateee, and that's not a fun system to operate under. And enlisted dudes have an added bonus when it comes to setting expectations. Anybody ever seen this book before? Give me a show of hands if you've seen this book before. Yeah, it's a little brown book, AFI 362618. So when I go to set expectations for my enlisted folks that have worked for me, I will normally set this book down, I will flip open to chapter 5 and go, all right, Master Sergeant, your senior NCO responsibilities are these. You are to provide highly effective leadership. And I paraphrase and highlight the things in this book that I think are especially important and then expand on those as we go along. So these are your expectations. They're already set for you, and you just have to convey those using your own personal leadership style in an effective way. And this also gives you a chance to discuss the ratee's careers and goals. Let me tell you, if you sit down with one of your folks and you have looked over their record, you have actually put brain bites to deciding how their future could shape up if they wanted it to go that way, if they worked hard, if they performed, if they took some extra opportunities. I think it will go a long, long way in showing how much you care about your folks. As leaders, it's important to care about our folks, and conveying that we did a little homework, that's a huge thing. Now, at the mid-time, you're going to do a feedback session, making sure it includes very specific examples of where they're doing awesome, if they're not doing so awesome, where they're not. And these are an opportunity to fire a warning shot across the bow. If you're going to give someone some markdowns, I normally whip out this book again and go, all right, this is what you're supposed to be doing, senior NCO. It says you are supposed to be developing your NCOs. However, I have no evidence that you're doing anything of that sort. So this is where I'm calling your leadership a little bit deficient, where I need you to put some more effort in improving. And then I have this book, I annotate it on the form so that no one is ever surprised what their rating should be on their EPR. Have you ever gotten a form, any kind of paperwork before, and you've been surprised by it, better or worse? Well, that should never happen, especially if it's worse. The informal and formal feedback should occur continually. Step number 3, we want to collect the data. Give you a chance to read the Dilbert there again. So as we're collecting the data, it's a couple weeks, months, 6 weeks out from now the report being due up the chain. First thing I'm going to collect is self-documentation. So this is one of my expectations every single time. I go, hey dude, I have 25 folks that work for me, and I can't keep track of everything you all do. you're going to write down on a piece of paper and turn in for me the things you've done. I'm not asking you to write your report. That's not allowed. You can if you want, but you know, what I want you to do is to at least provide me some bullets and feedback. Does that make sense to everybody? And that is totally allowed, and you should do that. Folks should take charge of their own careers and help out raters who have a challenging time. Completed packages. So if there's a letter of evaluation you've gotten from a previous rater, and if there's a training report, any type of award write-up, like a 12OAY type of write-up. Anybody ever written awards packages before? Anybody besides me? Okay, we got a few folks. Writing awards packages, that's painful. But here's the good news about it. Once you write an awards package, it's pretty much the EPR just on a different form. You cut and paste bullets, move it on over, and it's done. So it's not like you're doing double the work and you're taking care of your folks. So writing awards packages are huge. Decorations. Anybody written a decoration before? Show of hands. Anybody written a decoration? Okay, a few people have. Decorations are normally sentence forms of bullets that go into EPRs and OPRs. So it's not like you're doing double the work. There's redundancy there as well. So when those things are written, make sure that they make it across the channel into other paperwork. Your notes. So this is what I do. I keep a Word document on my computer. I had the list of all the names of my ratees, and as we go throughout the year or the 2-year cycle, I type in whatever the form is. Hey, guy did this project, he took part in it, and I just make a quick note on my Word document on my computer and shut it down. I keep a Word document for myself to keep documentation so I can do that self-documentation turning up the chain as well. Now this is where it gets to be very important for your DSGs, those part-time dudes. Team awards and team bullets. So I heard you got a UCI coming up in 26 months. I heard some kind of annual safety inspection within the next few weeks that is happening across the wing. Those are just two things I heard this morning. And awards and recognition that come out of those things, that's huge. And so what you want to do is, let me see, anybody in here contributed to a team award for this wing or the state or one of your squadrons? Anybody? Anybody written some bullets, contributed some? It's probably more of an officer thing, but you can get a hold of those. Those team awards have a lot of bullets on them. And guess what? You can pilfer those things to work into individual EPRs. And so if there's a team award won, let's say you're the Airlift Squadron of the Year for AMC or the National Guard, whatever it is, that could be easily worked, that should be easily worked into most of your folks' EPRs and OPRs. If you have a UCI and you do great work and there's a great inspection result, so the team got an excellent or outstanding, guess what? That is another EPR bullet. It's a clean kill. It's very easy, and it's a way to fill up the form with meaningful information. Anybody have any questions on that? Okay, so use the team awards that your unit's already cranking out and minimize the amount of work. Now we crank out thousands and tens of thousands of EPRs in the Air Force across all the components every year. What you want to do is not reinvent the wheel every time. So as we write EPRs, we don't want to cut and paste and copy information blatantly. Don't do that. But we want to use EPRs of other people with similar jobs if those opportunities are out there. I would encourage you to be sensitive of other people's information. Let's not ask them to see what stratification they got or to see what pushes they got or didn't get, but to go, hey man, send me some bullets. I just want to know how you're capturing what you're doing. How many of you in the past 5 years have deployed with RegAF dudes? Have been in the deployed environment with the RegAF dudes? Anybody? A few of you? Okay, show of hands, a lot of you have. Let me tell you a secret. The RegAF dudes, whatever you're doing downrange, they're doing similar stuff downrange, and they're capturing it really well because I see all the reports at higher levels when they come back. So if you're downrange with RegAF folks, don't be afraid to go over and go, hey man, could you teach me a little bit about how you're capturing what we're doing here? And let's use the other component to help us out so we all work together as a team. So collecting the data, hugely important. And collecting the data occurs throughout the year, but especially as you get to the end. It also may involve some research, looking up some very specific numbers as you start to refine the stuff. But collecting the data, all this will be very important. Now if you open up, I'm going to use the 911 instead of the 910 when it comes to showing you examples. The 910's a little bit less involved for tech sergeants and below. But you can see here, for the EPR, the top block, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about exactly how you fill this in, but you can see all the way down there, information is filled in when you get an EPR. Notice it says that a report is due. All that information should match. Job description, hugely important. Good duty title, and then significant additional duties. Most folks, unless you're a command chief or squadron group superintendent, you're probably going to have some kind of additional duties. And let me tell you, what kind of report did I give you for the 9/11? What kind of guy is this? No. What's his AFSC? He's a band dude, right? And I gave you a band dude intentionally because some of you, as I talk, and I'll talk op stuff or maintenance stuff, you go, well, man, of course it's easy for the maintenance guys to crank all these numbers in the report. Well, let me tell you, this is not a maintenance report. This is a band dude, okay? And the report, and the point is that regardless of AFSC, the same stuff applies. The same rules apply. It's done the same way. Even for band dudes, that all they're doing is going out and playing in various shows around the country. And I love band guys. I was a band guy in middle school. I'm not disrespecting them at all. What I'm saying is that even in an AFSC that doesn't even exist in this wing, that's an uncommon one, that's a small pool of people, they are doing the reports in similar ways to the methods I'm going to show you. Now you fill in the rater information, and then we move on to the back and fill in more rater information. So, after you fill in all the non-bullet stuff, you're now going to move on to the duty description. This is step 5. And let me just say that now we're going to get into the very specific methods. So what I found is when it comes to writing, there's a lot of folks that will tell you principles. They'll say, hey, make sure your bullets have impact. Make sure you give pushes to folks. But they won't tell you methods. So those are big principles that I'm going to tell you very specific methodology for writing so that it makes it into a science and not this nebulous thing out there that makes it difficult to do. So first of all, it's important not to waste the space. So for an EPR, you're going to have between 19 bullets and 24 bullets, and this is including the duty description bullets. A lot of times folks leave out the duty description bullets, but those are important as well. You need to view the form as a holistic product. You have this entire piece of paper, you have these amount of lines to fill in, and how am I going to maximize the impact for that?
Hey, Travis, can we stop just a second before
Sure.
we get into the performance assets? The key duties, tasks, responsibilities. Where does that come from? The descriptor of what that person does. Where does that come from?
So where that comes from is it's written by you, and of course it has to pass some kind of logic test. You can't lie on there, but there's not an AFI that specifically defines the duty description that you're going to put into the block. And many of these, I've had to rewrite them several times because folks will have additional duties. They'll have prior duties that need to be included because there's bullets in the EPR that are included. So these are written by you. And if they need to be rewritten and written better, then rewrite them. And so for the past 10 years, I've rewritten just about every duty description I've gotten off the other guy's OPR because it wasn't good enough. It was kind of an afterthought, and they're part of the EPR. Now, is this the most important part? No. But every word on the form counts, and that's the mentality I want you to be in.
Okay.
So, no white space. How many of you think it's utterly ridiculous that the Reg F guys don't include any white space on their EPRs? That's the cardinal sin. Anybody think that's just a stupid rule? Well, whether you think that's a stupid rule or not, that's just the way it is. Because let me tell you, when you look at an EPR, you look at an OPR, what white space sends. It sends one of two messages. One message is, your rater didn't care enough about you, didn't think your performance was worthwhile enough to fill in the entire form. And when I talk about white space, I'm talking about even a word's worth of white space at the end of a block. It sends a second message, and this is the most important message, that you didn't do enough during the year to fill in the stinking form. So if you didn't do enough stuff, why should we promote you? Why should we give you another job? Why should we give you another assignment? That's just the mentality. And by the way, as we get into the writing of this, who is the target audience for EPRs on the RegAF side? And I would submit, for the most part, how it would be on the Guard side as well. The target audience, what rank is the target audience for EPRs, in my opinion? So you have to guess my opinion. Anybody got any ideas? Generals. That's a good guess. I would say that it is Chief Master Sergeants and Chief Master Sergeants that are inside the career field. Chief Master Sergeants inside the career field, that's the target audience, and that's how RegAF guys write. Because, very quickly, let me just explain the RegAF promotion system, much different than the Guard promotion system. The RegAF enlisted promotion system, and some of you who are RegAF probably remember this, work on points. So, time in grade, time in service, how your ratings are on your EPRs, all those equate to points, decorations, the numbers, they have a point value, those get factored in, and then your standardized testing for your career field and then Air Force wide. All those points equal a point total that decide who gets promoted all the way through Master Sergeant. Then, for Senior Master Sergeant and Chief Master Sergeant, all those points still count, except they have a board. And it's 2 chiefs within the career field and a colonel that decide the board score, and that makes half of the total points. And so what traditionally happens is folks that have trouble testing maybe but are awesome performers, they'll limp along all the way until they get to Senior Master Sergeant, then their board scores will blow everybody out of the water and they'll get promoted to Senior and Chief a lot faster. Folks that do really well in testing but don't have that awesome a performance throughout the career, maybe they'll move a little faster, and then when they get to Senior and Chief that they won't make the cut because their board scores don't communicate to the Chief Master Sergeants that are in their career field. So just want to keep in mind, when you write this, think about a Chief Master Sergeant in your career field, but still have the ability to communicate to the audience at large, even folks that aren't in your career field. So, you want to think when you write bullets that you're going to make radio calls. So here's a radio call for those that are in ops. Cider 27, gear down, full stop, runway 35. I didn't put any extra conversational words in there. I didn't draw it out. I was very choppy, and I hit all the points I needed to hit it and then moved on. You're going to make radio calls when you write bullets. Guard bullets, traditionally, as I've read, are conversational. You think this is a Faulkner novel, and you're going to write a huge stream of consciousness type of sentence for me, okay? So don't do that. Don't do that. I don't need that. I don't have time to read that, and it takes up too much room. Now, do we have a personnelist in the room? Anybody in the personnel career field? All right, Captain, stand up. What's your name?
Ron Hagen.
Hey, Ron. Glad you're here today. I just want to let you know, Ron, that all of us in the room here are ticked off at you. We're ticked off at you, especially me. I'm ticked off at you because you have given me only 19 to 24 bullets, Ron, to talk about all this quintessential awesomeness right here for an entire year. There is no way that I can fit all this, yeah, you can sit down now, I'm still going to yell at you, all this quintessential awesomeness into so few bullets. Now, of course, I'm really not ticked off at Ron, but if you're in that mentality, then you'll try to pack a lot more stuff into the form. Your mentality right now, at least a lot of Guard guys' mentality is, I just want to fill in the white space. I just got to put enough words on there to make it work out. And when that's your mentality, your EPR ends up, it begins with an S. It sucks, stinks. Yeah, whatever one you want to use, choose one, A or B. It works just fine. So you have to be in the mentality of packing as much stuff in there because you're ticked off at the personnelist. You're ticked off at Ron because Ron didn't give you enough bullets to talk about how awesome you were. All right, acronyms and abbreviations. Another thing that we traditionally don't do in the Guard is use acronyms and abbreviations in forms because I can fill up a lot more of the line with a lot less work if I spell out United States Air Force. If I spell out non-commissioned officer, Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, that takes up half the line and I'm done, right? No, that's wrong. Don't do that. You want to use acronyms and abbreviations often. And on the RegAF side, what happens is dudes will try to cram in so much that it will lose clarity. So you'll have 4 or 5 acronyms in a row, and when I have the 1 second rule, which is I read it, and it takes me more than 1 second to figure out what you're trying to say, it should be rewritten. That's not our problem, though. Our problem is we don't pack near enough in the line. So you don't want to spell out common acronyms, and you want to define any very uncommon acronyms that are AFSC specific in the first bullet they appear. So that duty description thing, that's a great place to spell out a few uncommon acronyms that you're going to use throughout the EPR. Now, the reg says that you can spell them out in other comments in the bottom of the raters block, that last block. However, that's premium real estate, and I would not spell them out there. I would do it higher up in the form in places that don't matter as much. So this is how you're going to write duty description bullets. Yes?
I have a question.
Sure.
About the acronyms and abbreviations. You didn't mention punctuation. And in this particular example, there's a lot of exclamation marks and quotations and stuff that seems like filler, but is that okay? You can use that kind of...
You want to use punctuation, and what punctuation does is it keeps it from being conversational. It makes it radio call-like. So when I have a thought, an action word, the accomplishment, then a semicolon, then I move on to the next thing. Or I have dash dash, and I talk about the impact. You saved X amount of dollars. That allows me to consolidate the line even more. So you want to use a lot of punctuation. Okay? Now we'll talk about that more in a little bit. Any other questions? Good question. All right, action word, you want to quantify and use the scope. So what that means is you want to tell me specifics. Another standardized problem in the Guard is not giving me specifics. You want to tell me the specific number of dollars of resources that you oversee, the number of people you lead, the number of airplanes you're working on, how much all the parts are, the equipment, all that sort of thing. You want to use as many numbers as possible and make them very specific. Specifics show impact. We are the most technical, data-hungry, analysis-driven service of all the components, of all the different services. And it shows in our senior officer corps, and that's how we communicate in the Air Force is by specifics. And so you have to use specifics. Now, it does take a little bit more time to get specific numbers sometimes. So anyone who has been on a deployment, you start pulling deployment numbers, it may take a little extra research, but that's what's required to write good EPRs. So an EPR duty description bullet starts with a present tense action word, and you have the list in the Breaking the OPR Gold. I got about 100 of them. Choose one like directs, supervises, leads, manages, all those things, develops. Those are action words. They're strong action words. They're very clear. Now, you want to quantify it as much as you can, as we already discussed, and that's how you write action bullets. So you can see just on your examples, and the examples I pulled were just real quick, then they're not the very best NCOs and senior NCOs in the world that are in your example handouts, but these are well-written duty descriptions. They have very good numbers in them. They start out telling me exactly in one sentence what the NCO and senior NCO's job is, and there's money, there's missions, there's people, and all that is defined out very, very well. So this is how you write a duty description. And if you have additional duties, you can define them in here and try to pack as much of the great things that you do for your job and what your duties are to show leadership and responsibility, especially at the senior NCO level. So there's writing duty description bullets. Now let's move on to checking the boxes. This will be a fun one. So, checking the boxes, you're going to assess the airmen, and you are going to grade them accordingly. So as you can see, for those not familiar with the form, there are all throughout the different categories on the front. There's does not meets, meets, above average, and clearly exceeds. Those are the categories. So you grade them in each category. Then you go to the back and the rater's assessment and the additional rater's assessment overall. You check 1 through 5 for those categories as well. Now, let me say very clearly that when you assess folks, you should do what's right in your heart. What you feel like their performance is should be the number one thing that guides you. However, there's a second thing that should guide you. And this is sometimes challenging to understand for people that especially want to toe the line, that the going rate is an overinflated rating. That's the going rate. I'm just saying that is the going rate. Now, what that means is that if I use the word average, what should that mean by definition of the word average? What that means is, in mathematical terms, is that on the Reg App side, 50% or more should be 3s or below. That's what average means. Is that not what average means? Because half the people are average or below, the other half are average or above, right? So that is not how it works, especially in the senior NCO ranks. They are normally firewalled, and if they're hard-working guys that are doing their job, not causing trouble, and have their squares filled. So the going rate has to inform you. So because if you're a hardcore guy and you go, my guys, I'm going to make this system work like it's supposed to work. And the system that as it's supposed to work ends up your guys not getting promoted, your guys not getting opportunities, and everybody else who's using kind of the overinflated going rate kind of system, then they end up winning out over your guys, even though their performance is similar. So I know that may be I know this is a sensitive subject. I just wanted to throw out those two things, and then you ultimately, at the end of the day, decide what is best, and that's why we pay you the big bucks to be the rater. Okay? So just a few rules. If you check does not meet on the front on any rating, it is a referral EPR by necessity. If you check a 1 or 2 on the back, it's a mandatory referral EPR. That's the way the system works. Just want to make sure you understand that. And if you are going to do any type of referral work, you got to get the chain of command involved. If you're going to put adverse actions or adverse words on the report, you got to get the chain of command involved. And I'm intentionally not going to teach you how to do that, because if you're going to do that, I want you to do the hard work so you don't miss anything. Looking at the AFIs, talking to the chain of command, getting the JAG briefs, things like that. Sir?
I want you to give a definition of a referral OPR, or EPR. Can you do that?
Yeah, so our referral EPR is when somebody is not meeting standards. It's just the simplest way to say it. So referral is if they fail a PT test, you got a PT test failure, and things, whatever internal things have been done to mitigate, and you can look at the EFIs to talk about those specifics, and then it ultimately ends up they're failing, they're going to fail, and that's done. That means in the fitness block does not meet, and by definition it has to be a referral EPR. That's the way the system works, okay? So there are implications, of course, and promotions and whatnot to getting a referral EPR, and in general it's bad. Everybody agree? It's bad. That's how it works. It's a bad EPR. Does everybody understand? Okay. So this is how the check the box things works. Now, let me just define the evaluators, because sometimes this can be confusing. So everybody look down at your form. We'll look at the 911. Every 911, every 910 has to have 2 evaluators unless your evaluator, your rater, qualifies as a single rater. So if anybody works for Colonel Wall directly, the wing commander, he is a single rater. That means even if it's a staff sergeant or tech sergeant, he's going to close out the form at the bottom because he is a single evaluator. That would be the exception, though, and not the rule. Every EPR should have at least 2 evaluators on it, with the exception of that rule. For the senior NCO one, they can have up to 3 evaluators, rater, additional rater, and reviewer. A rater must be E5 or higher, and same grade as the ratee. And your time and grade doesn't matter. If you are a master sergeant of 3 years, rated by a master sergeant of 1 year, that's fine. That's allowed. Additional rater, normally the rater's rater. So that means whoever, the guy that signs the EPR or OPR of the guy that rates you, that's your additional rater. And E7 or higher, there's some more strict rules that apply for your AGRs, your full-time guys. Reviewer must be an 04, but no higher than the senior rater. So no higher in this wing than Colonel Wall. And the senior rater in the AFI does group commanders and wing commanders both qualify as senior raters for purposes of EPRs. Okay, additional raters who meets an 04 or higher requirement can close out the EPR. So for those of you where this is going to be a new system, your wing and group staff, admin folks are going to have to probably give you a little extra help when it comes to filling in these blocks, just to make sure all the rating chains stay in accordance with the AFI. But these are in general the rules. So let's talk now on the back. Flip to the 911. For those that are Master Sergeant and above, senior rater endorsement. So senior rater endorsement's a big deal on the RegAF side. It's a huge discriminator. So here's how it works. You see up there in the senior rater block there, here are the final evaluator's position. So this is whoever's signing in the reviewer block. This is the senior rater, which is, for A and G purposes, either a group commander or a wing commander. On the RegAF side, it's the wing commander is the senior rater. And then the senior rater's deputy is someone that works directly for and is rated directly by the senior rater. So depending on how your local folks want to do it here, if you consider the senior rater your wing commander, then that means a group commander or the vice wing commander, those can be senior rater's deputies. Intermediate level, that's someone that works for the senior rater's deputy. So traditionally squadron commanders work for group commanders, and then they would be intermediate level. And then lower level would be someone who can close out the report as an 04 who's not a squadron commander yet. That's kind of how it works. So what is requirement for senior rater endorsement? You have to have CCAF complete, and that's not a bachelor's degree. That's CCAF, and you have to have Senior NCO Academy. Now, it's a big deal on the RegAF side. It's a game changer. It's a deal breaker for promotion in their system. I understand that that's not a deal breaker for promotion for some of those factors in your system. I just would throw it out there as these are the rules that apply across the board for all components for senior rater endorsement. Time and grade eligibility is NA for the Air National Guard. So the way RegAF dudes work is in order for them to get senior rater endorsement, they have to have 20 months or 24 months in the seat for senior and chief to move up and get that senior rater endorsement. That's not how your system works. That's not the rules that apply to you in terms of time and grade eligibility. Now, I understand that this will probably require, as you all get into it, some local guidance of how the senior rater endorsement system is going to apply or not apply, or how high you're going to carry all your part-time reports. These are the rules, and we'll leave it to your local leadership to decide how that's going to happen. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, that's checking the boxes, step 6. So now we move to writing the bottom lines. So this is the construct you're going to use. Again, I'm trying to make this a science for you. This is how you're going to do it. You're going to go strat and award first, then strong word picture. Then you're going to give the pushes. Pushes for assignments, pushes for promotion. This is the construct you should use to write all your bottom lines. So this is the most important part of the EPR. Just like on OPRs, it's the part that folks are going to read the most as they're flipping through the form. It's the last line in other comments block on the rater block. It's the last line in the additional rater and reviewer blocks. Those are the bottom lines. So this is where the strongest material goes, and if you have the next level of strongest material, what you're going to do is fill in the highest ranking blocks on the top lines as well. So again, we view the form holistically. You gather all the data. You did that in step 3. You decide what the strongest stuff is. Sometimes you're not going to have a strat. Sometimes you're not going to have an award for a guy. Find the strongest stuff and put it where it counts the most. That's what we're trying to do, viewing the form holistically. So you're going to use the first lines in the additional rater blocks if you need more room for strat and awards. Let's say you have an NCO, senior NCO that has a whole lot of stuff. They won awards, they are getting stratified, and you can use the top lines to help break it up and put in more of that impact if you want. So first of all, stratification awards. For EPRs, we have some officers in the room, so let me just say, EPR and OPR rules are very different. EPR stratification is the world of no. Everybody say it with me. Say no. So can you do this in terms of stratification on the EPR? The answer is no. That's normally the answer. So that's kind of how it works. On OPRs, we use all sorts of different rules because our promotion system works differently. And it's required in order to effectively determine who the best candidates are. That's not the way the enlisted system works on the RegAF side. So we have the rules where stratification may only be X of XX Master Sergeants or X of XX Senior Master Sergeants for guys you actually own. So if you're a chief and you have 7 Master Sergeants that work for you, you could put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of 7 Master Sergeants, and that's it. That's the only thing you can put, okay? So that's how it works. So let me just ask you a few questions. Is this allowed? 1 of 13 senior master sergeants, said by the wing CC. Chief. No, because you can't stratify chief master sergeants or chief master sergeant selects. The system doesn't consider that to be a value because they're already chief master sergeants. 2 of 21 tech sergeants from a flight chief. Can I say that? No, that's right, because it's a tech sergeant and below cannot be stratified. Can a group CC say 1 of 7 master sergeants in the LRS? No, because it's a subpool. So a group commander must stratify all the master sergeants that work for him. He can't reach down into a sub-organization and say, all right, that's my number 1 guy there. He's got to consider the entire pool and stratify accordingly. Can I say this? Number 3 of 17 senior NCOs. Can a squadron commander say that? No, because it's not a peer comparison. So that means that you're lumping in master sergeants, senior master sergeants, chiefs all together. You can't do that. It's got to be those 2 statements. Can I say this? Number 1 of 100 senior master sergeants I've supervised. No, that's right. We're getting the hint now, right? So no, because historical stratification is not allowed on EPRs. Can I say this? Wing NCO of the year, 1 of 78 NCOs. No, even though he won the award, you can put it in there as the award. You can say maybe best at 78 NCOs if you wanted, but you can't give that stratification that goes there because it's not a part of the system and the system does not consider that value added, so it's prohibited. All right, so that's stratification. Very limited on stratification. So next, strong word pictures, pushes. Next job, promotion. So strong word picture. I focus on leadership and I focus on the best qualities for the word pick. So what that means is I want to talk about, especially in the senior NCO ranks, how they're leading, that they're a phenomenal leader, etc., etc. And then I also try to think about what qualities the individual possesses where I could provide meaning. So sometimes when dudes write these, we'll use crazy things like, hey, pure platinum or golden touch or silver surfer. I mean, I don't even know what that means, you know what I'm saying? And so we want to be careful in the words that we use to really truly convey meaning. If one of your chiefs wrote, this is the NCO my NCO who has the most integrity I've ever met. Is that a stratification? No. I mean, but would that convey meaning to me? If you're talking about the guy that has the most integrity that the chief's ever encountered, that's a huge statement. Now make sure you mean it, make sure it's true, but think about ways in word pictures that you can convey meaning when dudes are flipping through records that would actually convey to a chief or to a colonel even that this guy is awesome, if indeed that's the message you want to send. So for the push, current grade +1, that means next assignment, you're going to push for on these bottom lines toward the end, current rank or next rank. So if you want to groom a guy for first sergeants are master sergeants or above, so that's a good push because it's current grade, the grade they're in tech sergeant, +1 is master sergeant, so that means that groom for tech sergeant is groom for first sergeant rather, is a good push on this one. I can't say on a master sergeant's EPR though, make him a command chief because that's current grade +2, so it's therefore prohibited by AFI. Promotion push at the end of the line, all blocks. So on that assignment push, if you have 3 blocks to fill in, 3 bottom lines from a rater, additional rater, and reviewer, and you make a push on 1 or 2 for assignment, so be it. But every block for guys that you want to get promoted should have promotion pushes, and it should be strong. Promote to tech sergeant now. Promotion, absolute must. Those are strong pushes. On the bottom, promote, just putting promote at the end, that's a weaker push. Okay, so you want to convey your thoughts with enthusiasm and with absolute immediacy is what you're trying to say. This guy should be a senior master sergeant now. Unless you don't think he should be a senior master sergeant now, then you can convey that as well. So I want you to write intentionally, okay? I want you to write on purpose. But up until this point, most folks in the Guard, we've written reports, OPRs and EPRs, unintentionally. We made them unintentionally weak. And so I just want you to know you're making it weak and make that decision consciously. So, this is another thing that some of you will do. You'll use cuckoo guard logic on me. You'll say, I could push them for promotion, but they told me that they're probably going to retire in a year or two, and there's probably not a slot for them for that promotion vacancy, so I'm not going to push them for senior master sergeant. Okay, you use reality. Don't use reality. Don't inject current circumstances into what their performance deserves and what their potential deserves. Does that make sense to everybody? This ends up being an issue because dudes don't get pushes because of circumstances that are local or things that going on in the personal life that are not related and that you can't consider via AFI. So make sure you use potential and performance. PME pushes, we're going to talk OPRs later. We make PME pushes and OPRs for the officers in the room, not in enlisted performance reports. No PME pushes. You can talk about awards a guy won, like the John Levitor Award out of ALS. You can put that in an EPR. You can talk about the senior enlisted joint PME if you do that on the web-based training. If you're going into the joint environment that a lot of senior NCOs will do. But you can't make a push for PME. You can't say, send to Senior NCO Academy now. That's not allowed. Bottom line examples. This is small. Let me just read them to you. My number 1 of 11 Master Sergeants, tireless devotion, exemplary leadership, masters all, destined Senior Master Sergeant, must promote now. That's a strong, good line, strong stratification, good word pictures, and we pushed him for promotion. So here's one with an award. You have an assignment push, and then you also have make him a tech sergeant immediately. Again, no strat, no award, just a good word picture, and then an assignment push and a promotion push. Here, again, strong words, promote him immediately, as soon as possible. Okay, now let me talk about the 2 degrees of bad, 3 degrees of good. This is your organization. Make it a squadron, make it a group, make it a wing, make it a flight. This is normally how folks kind of rack and stack out. So, if you are in the first tier, this is your number 1 guy. This is your best guy or gal. This is the best that you have. It's the guy that's going to get the strat if he's a master sergeant or senior master sergeant. He's going to get the number 1 stratification. These are the best folks. Here, the second tier are going to be the folks that are your awesome people, the go-to folks, the folks that are making your squadron, group, wing run, but they're just the next level down. Then in the middle, where half of you in this room, by definition, are your average Joes, because that's the way it works. So you're an average guy. These are guys that show up to work. Then these are guys that do a good job, and they deserve recognition, but they're in the middle, which is where at least half the folks normally fall. At the bottom, you see weak swimmers. These are folks that require a lot of follow-up, a lot of extra supervision. They're not doing anything wrong or bad or anything to get you in trouble or to get themselves in trouble, but they require some extra help and motivation. So if your boss is following up with you 5, 6, 7 times on a task he gave you, you're probably a weak swimmer. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to tell you. So anyway, then the bottom part are the guys that are in trouble. So if you got a guy, Article 15, LOR, those type of things, they get to be in the in trouble category at the bottom. Now when you look at this chart, what I don't want you to do is take a snapshot in your mind and say it's fixed forever. Anybody ever know somebody in the top tier who got in trouble? They have to go down and do a penalty lap in the bottom box. and then they slowly, as they regain their reputation, get to move back up again toward the top. So don't ever look at this as this is a static thing that can never change. An average Joe can become a first tier guy if he starts pushing it up. So this is how you're going to use, and you can't see it on the bottom, so I'm going to read it to you. This is how you're going to use these tools, use the EPR as a tool to convey where guys fall in the rack and stack. So first you're going to use stratification. If you're a senior or master sergeant, your stratification should fall. If you're a first tier guy, you should get stratification all the way up, right? If you're a second tier dude, you may get stratification from your chief or maybe your squadron commander, but not above that. Then that's kind of how it normally falls out when you're looking at how strat works, because strat is so limited in the enlisted system. Awards. Now awards, when I say awards, I mean 12OAY, Lance P. Sidejohn Award, put guys in for awards. This is how your NCOs stand out. So your number one NCO should be a 12OAY guy during the course of his NCO tenure. At least at some level, at some point, he or she should have multiple awards. That's how the enlisted system truly distinguishes the best performers. Word pictures, you can use word pictures all the way down into your average Joe category. Use those, you know, the guy with the most integrity may be an average Joe. Good on him. Send him a strong word picture, help him out. Senior Rater endorsement, on the RegAF side, Senior Rater endorsement for the guys that have the blocks checked, CCAF and Senior NCO Academy, is normally given all the way well down into the average Joe category, and that's how the RegAF side works it. It's not if you have that stuff done, Senior Rater endorsement is not required, but it is the minimum standard to get Senior Rater endorsement. Pushes go all the way down through the average Joes. You should push hardworking guys for promotion continually. That's how the system works. Ratings 1 through 5. Here's where, when you get down to the weak swimmers, they should get markdowns. Now, should low-ranking average Joes get markdowns? I'll leave you to determine that, what's right in your heart. But weak swimmers and guys in trouble, they get markdowns. They don't get firewalled. That's just how it works. And then accomplishments, everybody all the way up and down the chain gets accomplishments. So that's how you use the form to make the form match where your guy or gal falls in the rack and stack. So later on, when opportunities come, who's going to be the chief? Who's going to be the command chief? Who's going to be whatever? We have a long paper trail to determine who has performed over a long period of time to see who fills those more senior positions, to see who gets opportunities going up the chain. Does anybody have any questions about this? That's how you take the form and make it work out. So now we're going to move on to accomplishment bullets. So this is filling up the rest of the form. This is your formula for doing accomplishment bullets. You start out with an optional zinger. So a zinger is like a 1 to 5 word intro phrase. And I use zingers sparingly because a lot of times they just end up wasting space. But if you say outstanding warrior or combat vet, those are words, zingers. Outstanding leader, those type of things. They do take up more space. You can use them if you want. They are optional. What you definitely want to do is go to my list, choose you an action word, developed, inspired, led, supervised, commanded, whatever. Choose that action word, put it in there. It's a past tense action word. Accomplishments are what you did. Duty description is what you do, present tense. Accomplishment bullets are what you did. Now you're going to take the accomplishment, whatever that is, and make it quantifiable. Maybe you reviewed, 24 records for promotion in the personnel system. Maybe you did so many safety inspections, whatever. Then you're going to take the quantifiable impact and make it to the highest level. So again, numbers, quantifying as best we can is what we want to do, and we want to take things to the highest level. So some of you'll see impact in maybe your sections or your squadrons, but what you did, you had impact higher up. You probably had wing impact on some of the things that you did. Maybe even state impact. Maybe you could even tie what you did to having some kind of national level impact. So you want to quantify things and take them to the highest level. Off base, outside the wing, that has military impact, you can definitely include it in your report. And we'll talk more about civilian employment in just a minute. You state your accomplishments clearly, concisely, specific. Now, let me just tell you, it takes practice to write bullets that are clear, concise, and impactful. It just takes a lot of practice to do it. I could stand up here for the next 10 hours and teach you about it, and until you put pen to paper and struggled with doing it yourself, so to speak, you're not going to succeed, because that's just the way it works. Just like anything, it takes practice. Colonel Wall and I could sit watching videos how to fly C-17s for a month, and we couldn't know how to fly a C-17 until we actually jumped in the sim, did the training, got flights, messed up, and that's the same way on a smaller level that EPRs will work as well. You want to finish with strong impact. So how did you improve the capability to perform the mission? Combat readiness, execution, and you want to quantify as possible, take it to the highest level again. Now, you want to then take all those bullets and you want to match them to the categories on the front. So everybody look at the categories on the front, standards, primary duties, all those things on both the 910 and 911. You just match them where they go, and they have extra words to tell you the things to consider. It's spelled out very clearly on the form. Take the stuff you have, match it as best you can to what categories it goes in, and then put the strongest stuff in your additional rater and reviewer blocks on the back. All right, I'm going to give you 8 ways to show impact, because oftentimes what happens, we do all right making accomplishments, but when it comes to showing impact, we do a much poorer job in communicating that. So when you get ready to do an accomplishment, you have something that you've done, then go through these 8 things to decide the best way to show the impact. And the impact goes on the last half or third of the line. The first thing you're going to do is ask yourself, most importantly, what is the COCOM impact to this? And I say COCOM because in this wing, your COCOM deployments is actually downrange. In some career fields, your COCOM impact is stateside. Space dudes sitting in buildings doing cyber stuff or whatever, I mean, those guys have COCOM impact, but they didn't ever leave their office. So you want to think about how you have COCOM impact, combat operational requirements, and take it to the highest level. So you can say that you dropped 100 tons of stuff out of the back of, for you loadmasters and flight engineers or whatever, out of the back of the airplane. You can say that and just leave it at that. Or you can say that you accomplished some higher level objective in the war fighting, which is totally allowed, and that's how the RegAF guys roll. So that's how you want to think about doing your impact as well. Maybe you are an MSG guy and you enabled the deployment package that walked out the door. Maybe it's not 2,000, maybe it's 100, maybe it's 20. But you say you enable these warfighters to get the job done downrange, and that's a strong impact. Next, higher headquarters. So this is one where things that come down from on high in writing, you can tie and give impact to what you're doing. So the President's focus at the strategic level has moved to the Pacific. So if you say supported the POTUS's, pivot to Pacific. So if you have C-17 missions that are focused on the Pacific theater, this would be a possible impact statement where you could tie what you're doing here at the tactical level to what the President's vision is at the strategic level. Does everybody get that? Everybody see how that works? So more commonly is a CSAF message. So the CSAF puts out a vision. He says, hey, training's important to me. So perhaps some of your impacts based on the recent CSAF vision that came out could be, hey, I did all this training for these folks, and I'm fulfilling the CSAF vision for the Air Force because I'm getting effective training done. It's not too much of a stretch. That's how RegAF reports are written. For those of you that may have taken place in the morale and welfare inspections that the Chief of Staff directed recently, where we're making sure our areas are sanitized with anything that may be inappropriate or offensive. Those are, if you took part in inspections, if that's what you did, then that's a way to tie to the big boss's vision up here. So that's kind of how it works. Mission stats. We all love mission stats. Maintenance guys are awesome at mission stats. Give me some stats, dudes. All right, 98% this, 94% this, we had this launch rate, whatever. Stats are great. They give us numbers. They show us hardcore meat impact, which is what we want. Savings, number 4. If you saved money, if you saved manpower, if you saved resources, capture that as an impact, because that's a big impact, especially in this fiscally constrained environment. If you're an aircrew guy and you save an airplane from some kind of emergency type of a situation, then the common statement is that you saved however many lives are on board and you saved the airplane. Okay, so as long as it's not something just ridiculously stupid that's really not an emergency and it's really an emergency where you had to declare an emergency, I would look at using some of these statements. Number 5, difficulty factor. How many of you have done stuff in your career where you got the job done, but you didn't have the resources that the system said you should have to get the job done? Anybody besides me done that? Okay, I get some chuckles around the room because that's how we roll. So if you can concisely state that, to say, hey, we got all the training done across the MAGCOM, across the wing, and we had 8 people short in our section. We should have had this many people because that's what we were authorized, but we did the job successfully with this number of people. That's a good impact. And anything that is truly a first ever. So if you are standing up the first unit QA program, that's a first ever, that's some difficulty factor. And if you are in Libya and you do the first combat whatever mission in Libya, that's a great first ever. Does that kind of make sense? So anything that's truly a first ever, you want to definitely use, and that makes a great impact.
Hey, sir, I got a question.
Sure.
On the difficulty factor, we can only compare guard against guard, because like in a lot of our jobs we do with one person that an active duty shop does with 13. Can we use that, or is that not a difficulty?
Well, I would, if you compared, I mean, you want to, when I say difficulty factor, I mean what you're authorized. So if you could conceivably make some kind of leap to say you're doing the same type of job that an active duty guy has done, I would probably steer you more toward looking at what you're authorized, what you should have gotten to do the job, and what you actually got the job done with. When we talk about comparison, let me get to the next bullet. Actually, it's right here. Direct comparison is where you want to use probably more of what you're talking about. So a direct comparison is you take the Air Force average, you take a national average, you take a MAGCOM standard, and you decide how you rate it against that standard. And we do this all the time. Maybe it's the A&G standard. And so you compare, did you perform better or worse than the standard? So sometimes you rolled in under the average, which is good, and sometimes above the average is good, and whoever it is, you capture that in a percentage, or you set a new standard for the entire Guard in the way you did a certain mission. Does that make sense? Yeah, so because you are an AMC gained unit, a lot of your direct comparisons are going to be to AMC and what their standards are for the C-17 mission. So senior leader words, here's kind of how it works. Let me just tell you how the RegAF guys roll. Have you ever had a general officer show up to your base in the past few years? Anybody? Okay. Outside, maybe a big guy. Maybe, I know General Silva, the AMC commander, when I was working on the AMC commander staff, he would visit Guard units all the time. So when General Silva shows up to your base, you need to have some dude following him around, probably like Lieutenant Colonel Odom would probably be a good choice. I would vote for her. Have her follow around with a pencil and paper, just listening to anything he says. So he's walking along, he goes through your maintenance tool shop, and he goes, "Great job in this tool shop." And so Odom's behind him, he goes, "Great job," quotes. And then he walks on, and then guess what? That makes it, that statement rolls into your EPR for everybody in that shop. AMCCC said, "Great job." Does that see how that works? And that's a strong input because he's a 4-star general. And all of you are going, "This is totally ridiculous." Doesn't matter. I'm telling you how the system works so you can do it well and help out to take care of your folks. Because really, when we take a step back for a moment, I'm bombarding you with lots of information. I know it. But let me just ask you this. Are your folks worth it? Yes or no? Yes. Our folks are worth it. What I have learned over the past year and a half is that the Air National Guard has some incredible folks, and they are all worth it. So this is worth the time and effort it takes, at least in my opinion. That's why I'm here this week. So last thing, official awards and recognition. Now we did talk about those individual bigger level awards that are going to go on those bottom lines. Sometimes you'll have smaller awards like team awards. So if you were part of the EOG Crew of the Month, maybe, down range, that would be a great impact. You talk about some deployed stuff you did, and your impact is that you garnered this team award. Especially for enlisted folks, if you are coined by anybody, that should make it into your EPR as a great impact, especially a general officer gives you a coin, note it, make sure you remember it, and then let it flow for your impact. Anytime you have some kind of inspection where there's a grade on that inspection, you can talk about a key player, pivotal, vital to the units, the UCI, excellent or outstanding. So those are the 8 ways that you can show impact. If you run through all 8 of those, thinking through how you quantify, how you show that what you did actually mattered in the big scheme of things, I think you're going to have success. Does anybody have questions about this? We're almost done. Impact. Writing accomplishment bullets, which is what most of the form is going to be. Okay, let me give you a note on civilian employment. This is straight out of the new AFI. It says, hey, can't talk about civil service jobs, civilian occupations. unless it directly relates to the military position and their military performance. So, let me give you an example on how I would apply this. I would look for things in your civilian jobs, whether it be in your technician role, if you're a technician here, or whether it be downtown, and look for ways you can tie to military performance. So, anybody ever did lean training or Six Sigma training in your civilian job? Anybody? I see maybe a few cranium shakes. Guess what? Have that dude that did Six Sigma training downtown in his civilian job, roll him up here, have him take 20 minutes to look at a process improvement, and there's a bullet. Trained, Six Sigma, process improvement training, and then he rolled in here and it tied to military performance in his job because he looked at a process in his part-time job that helped. Now, does that make sense to everybody? I know it is frustrating because we have a lot of folks in the Guard that do awesome stuff all the way around, all during the week, contribute to the community and serve admirably, and you can look for some things as long as you can tie it directly to the military performance and the position that you might be able to get some impact on. Now, if you have volunteer service, the more senior the bullets, then the volunteer service should probably be something about the top 3 or senior NCO group or chief's group or something like that where you're doing volunteer service through that. But any civilian service, teaching Sunday school, visiting at schools, all that sort of thing, definite fodder for the EPR. It shows you're a well-rounded, good NCO or senior NCO. So this is difficult to read. We're going to post these slides online, but these are just a bunch of bullets that show you how accomplishment bullets are written. And you'll see a few things. And if you can make it out, you'll see that there's lots of numbers. You'll see that there's lots of acronyms and abbreviations in there because we're making radio calls. We're tightening it down, trying to cram a lot of information into a single bullet. You'll also see punctuation, like you talked about, where we'll see slashes, where we'll see semicolons, where we'll see double dashes in order to make it a lot more concise. So I encourage you, when we post this stuff on the web, that you go back, you look at the slides, you look at the guide, and I think it will be helpful for you as you get ready to write EPRs as the big machine spools up over the next few years. Okay, last step, clean up and finalize. Check spelling. Things should not be misspelled in your EPR. Let me just say it again. Things should not be misspelled in your EPR. So when I get an EPR as an executive officer and it's been through three different enlisted dudes and things are misspelled, it just ticks me off. I'll just tell you, it just ticks me off. So there's a spell check button on the form. Check the spelling. Make sure that you're not making simple common mistakes that end up showing that you didn't care enough about your rateee to make sure the form was filled out correctly. Grammar, content. I do an intentionality check at this point. So here's where I go and I say, did I write this EPR the way I wanted it to be written? Is it strong enough or is it weak enough? Am I conveying the level that this individual is performing at? Have I written this intentionally? And then I take a nap. So the nap check is this: numbers, N, acronyms, abbreviations, A, and punctuation, P. So I just ran through that with you. On an OPR I wrote recently, those were my stats, if you will. Now this is not a requirement. This just gives you an indication of, did you write the form concisely enough? Are you making an effort to make it radio call, to make it very impactful? So 18 numbers, 68 acronyms and abbreviations, and 59 items of punctuation. So that means every line starts out with a dash. The FI says you have a space after the dash and then the words start, normally an action word. So from the action word all the way to the end of the line, count how many punctuation items you use. And this gives you a rough idea about what is a good number to show that you've written the form in a concise, impactful manner. Get a trusted peer review as you all enter into this endeavor of having to write all these EPRs, bounce stuff off your peers, trade information to help each other out. That'll be important. Compile the package, whatever your local wing decides goes in the package. Last few EPRs, the EPR notice that tells you had to do the EPR and gives you the duty title information. Whatever those things are, put the package together and send it up the chain. Then, realize when you submit it, you're not done yet. There are people that are going to review it, other enlisted and civilian personnel that are admin troops that normally take a look to make sure you're within compliance, some executive officer type folks at the higher level, depending on if it goes up that high, and then the decision makers that sign it. And when folks bounce stuff back, you may need to have a discussion about what is good and what's not. Someone may question whether or not you should give someone a markdown. I would just welcome the discussion, because if you're getting questions about whether or not you're giving somebody a markdown, that means that your more senior guys probably care about making sure that we're doing the right thing, and that's why they have to sign the form and you can't close it out yourself. So I would just be open to having discussions and being able to justify showing documentation where you set expectations, where they weren't meeting expectations. Paperwork is a great thing when you can throw out 5 or 6 different MFRs and feedback forms to show that over the course of 2 years, this markdown is totally justified. More work, I totally understand it, but this is how our system kind of goes when it comes to giving folks some bad news. Now, debriefs and signatures. The individual has to sign the form at the end. It's just an acknowledgement that they got the form. It's not an agreement with the rating at all. But that's part of the process. And so what I do is I print out the form, I sit down with the individual before I send it to them via email for them to sign with their CAC-enabled reader. In my opinion, it is cowardly to fire folks bad news, especially a bunch of markdowns, and go, hey, sign this and send it back to me. Or maybe one of your admin office folks does that. That's ridiculous. That should not happen. I'm a big fan of face-to-face communication, especially when it's a tough message that needs to be heard. So after I do that, I have them sign it, send it back, and send it up the chain. The process is complete when the records get updated in the system. So when the EPR actually loads and the individual can see it in the system, that's when the process is done. The last step is very important, because if it never gets uploaded in the system, then you didn't actually do it, right? Okay. So let me just give you some final thoughts as we come to a close here. Your most powerful tool as a rater is this. This is your pen. It has the power to promote. It has the power to demote. Folks, it has the power to make careers. It has the power to break careers. It has the power to cause lots of joy and lots of sorrow in the lives of your folks. So I'm a big fan of using your pen well and using it justly and rightly. Because, I've had a lot of raters through my time in the Air Force, and there's a legacy that each rater has left me. Because you know what? I remember some of what they said. I remember even some of what they did. But I remember all of what they wrote, because it's in my record until the day I separate or retire. It stays forever. And so the legacy you leave your ratees rather, is a very important one. So right now as we close, I have shooken up the cereal box, I took out the decoder ring, and I just handed you the decoder ring. So really the final question is, what are you going to do with it now that you have the gouge and the information? Any final questions before we dismiss? Anybody have any? I'm sorry?
What's TD stand for?
TD, Travis Daniel. First middle name. You thought it'd be something more awesome than that? No, not so much. I'm not really that awesome. I was just kidding about all that quintessential awesomeness. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
There toward the end, you made a comment about over the next couple of years. When is the drop dead date on? Hey, this is in place from now on.
That's a great question. As Colonel Wall said, I am an NGBA 8, not NGBA 1, so I'm here just to teach you how to write. I will tell you in general that the plan is for this to be a phased approach. I think he mentioned occurring on EPRs closing out on your birth months over the next few years. So there will be official guidance that comes out soon, and I don't know exactly how soon that will be, because it's got to go across, it's got to go behind the glass doors, as we say in the Pentagon, which is where the Secretary and the Chief of Staff sit, and then signed off, and all those good things have to happen at very high levels. When the information does come out, The plan is for there to be a phased approach for over the next few years, and I'll just leave it at that, for there to be EPRs beginning to close out on folks that eventually will end up being all our folks. All right, hey, I know that this was a long block on a subject that is not really exciting, but I tried to make it exciting. Hopefully I halfway succeeded in that endeavor for you. I appreciate your time and attention very much. Colonel Wall.